closet door. I'm here in my studio, aka Board Game Closet. I love this song. I'm worried we use it too much, but it's still a good song. Anyways, before diving into today's nugget of civics, I wanted to thank those of you who have donated to keep this bird in the air. We simply can't make the show without that tried and true public radio standby, listener donations. If you listen to the show and can support it, just go to civics101podcast.org and click donate, or just click the link in our show notes to give a gift in any amount. $5 a month as a sustaining member, it gets you a swanky new Civics 101 face mask. But whatever amount you can give, please know we are going to keep asking people smarter than us to answer your questions about how our country works. Thank you. Thank you. All right, here's the show.
Civics 101 is supported in part by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Some 60 years ago, a letter found its way into the United States mail addressed simply, Solicitor General, Washington, D.C. The postmaster apparently had no trouble discerning to whom it should be delivered.
This is Seth P Waxman. He was the United States Solicitor General from 1997 until 2001. He's giving a speech to the Supreme Court Historical Society in 1998, and this speech is given in the Supreme Court itself. And he talks about how weird it is to be facing away from those 9 imposing seats.
You know, with my rear end to the honorable justices, which I would never do were they here.
This is Civics 101. I'm Hannah McCarthy.
I'm Nick Capodice.
And today we're answering a listener who asks, can you explain the role of the Solicitor General and how, if at all, that position has changed over time?
Let's talk about what the job is about.
The Solicitor General has 2 main jobs. The Solicitor General, number 1, represents the United States in front of the U.S. Supreme Court whenever there is a case that affects the interests of the U.S. And second, the Solicitor General exercises control over all of the various cases, again, influencing the United States as a party, and determines which of those cases should potentially be appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court.
This is Amy Steigerwalt, professor of political science at Georgia State University. So what you need to know is that the Solicitor General is a lawyer for the U.S. government who is appointed by the president. Congress established the Solicitor General's office in 1870. For a government office, it's pretty small. There are about 20 lawyers, 4 of them deputy solicitors general. It's a sweet gig to have because occasionally other lawyers in the office get to argue before the Supreme Court. And it is the only office that the Constitution lists that requires its holder to be, quote, learned in the law. So represent the U.S. and decide what cases to appeal.
Those 2 roles are super important, which is why a lot of times the Solicitor General is known as the quote-unquote 10th Justice.
Although I get to participate in a lot of cases, I do not get a vote, and sometimes I could really use one.
The idea being that they are there to offer views about what the president, as, of course, the head of the executive branch and sort of the head of state for the United States, feels about issues. And so they also take on a particular role in that they are not simply there as a party to certain cases, but sometimes will actually be asked explicitly by the Supreme Court to offer their views on cases where they're not a party.
The Supreme Court asks the Solicitor General for advice?
In part because they're able to consult with the Attorney General and others in the executive branch to determine what the United States government's position is on something and what the actual laws are that pertain to a case. They can help to determine something called a Writ of Certiorari, which is the order by which a higher court hears a lower court's case.
A case being granted certiorari goes up when the Solicitor General recommends that it should be granted and says, yes, this is an important legal issue that the United States feels you, the court, need to decide.
But I have to ask, is there any concern that this leads to a breakdown in the separation of powers?
There is a high degree of trust that exists between the Supreme Court and the Solicitor General's office, that the Solicitor General is giving those opinions based upon the law, right? If they bring a case to them and say, you have to hear this is super important, and the justices read it and say, this is terrible, have you lost your mind? it then means the next time they're not going to take them as seriously.
Ultimately, the Solicitor General's job is to ensure that the United States speaks in court with a single voice, a voice that speaks on behalf of the rule of law.
That does it for the Solicitor General. If you have questions about one of the thousands of offices in our enormous government, or anything else about this democracy for that matter, ask us. Click the button at the top of our homepage at civics101podcast.org.
From